Welcome to the April WinHUGR meeting. Tonight we're going to kick off with a bit of agenda here. There are a few announcements to start with that will be quick. And then we're going to jump into the member conversations piece where one of our fellow members is going to come up and take about 15 minutes to tell you some of the stuff they're into. Capturing holograms with Spectator view is the main event tonight with Jackson. And then afterwards, we will have door prizes as usual, and a period where we have some demos and interactions at the end, and we usually wrap up around 8 and have to be out of here by 9. Unfortunately, I don't have pizza for you folks tonight, so please don't all bail. But there is pop and refreshment in the back, and we will do our best to make sure that next meeting we get the pizza sponsor back on track. So, without further ado, let's talk quickly about some of the things that have happened since we met last month. Unity 5.6 was finally released. It's come out of beta and it's now out in the wild. Has a couple of really cool features in there that you might want to check out, especially if you're dabbling in the 360 VR space or any type of video space. There's a brand new video player and a lot of other little things in there that are useful from a performance point of view. Worth noting that 5.6 has been publicly mentioned also as the last of this series. So if you have a professional license, you've already been getting the newsletter saying, hey, come on, subscribe for our next version. Because 5.6 is the last of the 5 series. I can't remember, I assume they're going to 6 next, but for some reason 7 is, I don't know if they're doing a Windows event where they're skipping numbers. That's what it was. Yeah, I knew there was a 7 in there somewhere. So that's Unity 5.6 update. HoloLens first year anniversary happened. There was a bit of hoopaloo on the Twitter stream as people congratulated and talked about all the cool things that have happened in the last year, which is really quite inspiring. It's out in a lot of different countries now. A lot of different apps are starting to hit the store. A lot of cool things have happened, but what's probably more exciting is what's about to happen. Developer site revamp happened since we met last. I mentioned that they were switching over from Windows Holographic to Windows Mixed Reality, and the dev site has gone through a fairly major face change, as well as some redirected links and a variety of other things. So if you haven't hit the dev site in a while, if you've got comfortable with the toolkit and the other things that you've been using and you don't have to refer to it as often, I encourage you to go explore around a little bit. There are a lot of new assets and resources available there for learning and for thinking about design concepts on HoloLens and other areas. Windows 10 Creator Update is now rolling out. I saw messages on some of our machines today where we're actually getting the upgrade notice. So Windows 10 is no longer just in the tech preview mode. And there was the mention of a Holograms app that has been released for the desktop. I was fiddling around a little bit. I couldn't get it to actually play on the machine with the anniversary, but I could get it if I played in the mixed reality mode. So I'm not sure the whole story there, but there is a Holograms app like you've seen on the HoloLens now available for the desktop version. Along with the 1-year anniversary update, or 1-year anniversary announcement, Liz Hammerin was appointed the corporate VP of mixed reality marketing around the same time. Not necessarily because of the anniversary, but it happened around the same time. She's formerly from Oculus. The reason why I point this out, because many of you may not know Liz, but I think it's an indicator that Microsoft is ramping up for a fairly serious push forward, starting to pluck people from the industry that have some experience in the space and other things are going on. So it's another indicator to us that stuff's afoot. So that kind of sets the stage for really what's ahead in the month ahead. There is one major thing where I think we're going to hear a lot of really cool information. Build 2017, May 10th to 12th. It's happening locally down in Seattle, and all indications from Twitter, from Alex Kipman, all of the different folks that are tweeting and talking about this are saying that there's a lot of stuff. The blogs are talking from Microsoft saying there's a lot of stuff, or there's stuff to talk about in this space coming at Build. The other thing that started to percolate as well today is there's a New York City Microsoft press event focused on Microsoft education. And not based on any insider knowledge. I'm not a Microsoft employee. But I look at the Twitter feeds and the blogs and other things. And if you look at Alex Kitlin's Twitter feed, he's been tweeting a lot about education lately. And the Microsoft Education event was one of the things that he pushed up and bubbled up. HoloLens team also pushed up and bubbled up that today. So I would also say that May 12th might be a really good day to try and catch the live stream and watch the news to see what's going on there, because that may be another day where something related to mixed reality in our space may be happening. So that's kind of the update. I don't cover everything and what's going on in the industry, but if there's anybody, especially some of the Microsoft folks that are aware of some of the announcements that have been made public that I might have missed, please raise a hand or speak up. I'm happy to augment this list. Don't see any takers for now. Let's go over to the member conversation piece. So Blaze, Miss Utama? Miss Utama?
I'm missing a T.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Crazy last-minute typo there. Sorry about that. Blaze is from Bellevue College, part of the Community Continuing Education Program, and she's going to share with us some of the direction where that program is going, some of the interesting initiatives that they're up to. So I'm going to hand the floor over to her and go switch over to her slide deck. Here's the clicker, but give me a second.
Yeah. You sure you know all this?
Hi, so I'm Blaze, and I'm here representing Bellevue College Continuing Education. We've actually started a program with the first session was given in the winter quarter, and the next session starting May 3rd is going to be our second session of a HoloLens AR/VR developer course. Okay, so I'm just doing my notices. Uh-oh. I can also do this without the slides.
I just want to see, YouTube is dug down to check the cables back there and hoping she's figuring out what's going on. Bear with us before we go through a little bit of a technical. Just doing a little rebooting.
That's fine. I can do it without presentation slides. I
got
can
a lot
do
of good
virtual.
arms?
Yes, I can dance.
Well, if
I,
you're,
yeah, I'm
if
perfectly
you're
happy
feeling
to do
ready
that.
to go,
Yeah.
we can keep working on this and maybe catch up with you on
Yeah,
slides.
no problem. We'll put this down in career development and job skills. So we're looking to provide courses that are useful for you to build your careers, to develop, and to engage in new technologies. And so we have an AR/VR developers course starting in May 3rd. And this course is going to cover a number of things, including actually 16 labs. So there's a lot of hands-on work involved. The 16 labs are the mini tutorials. Oh,
Want me to go forward or backward?
okay.
No, let me do it.
Oh, okay.
Is forward or backward?
Backward. 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 Okay, right there. Okay. So that's where we are right now. And the campus is located very close to this site right here. It's right up on Northeast 29th Street, so it's really very close. So, next slide. So demand for AR developers is extremely strong, especially recently. There's been because the space is very new, there are not that many developers out there, so the job market is very strong, and I know that there are a lot of companies now looking for developers. Next. And these are the general skill sets that companies are looking for. And so C, C++, C#, we use Unity for the HoloLens, and so C#, JavaScript, Unity are important skill sets. Now, some of the different areas that are using HoloLens or AR/VR in the workplace, the NASA is using it. NASA is actually using HoloLens to create virtual environments like the planet Mars, so that scientists can actually walk on the planet and look around and find out how that feels. And they also needed to do training for the mission to repair the Hubble Space Telescope, and they used virtual reality in order to train their astronauts how to do that. So, healthcare. I think it's the University of Louisiana or Louisville. It has psychiatry or psychology course. And they are working to help people who have fear of flying. And so what they do is they put them through kind of an adjustment course using the headsets to help them get more comfortable with the idea of being on a plane. So they use that in healthcare. Entertainment. Paul McCartney actually created a documentary in AR/VR and also did a concert using VR. In automotive, even though virtual reality, mixed reality is pretty new in the consumer space. The automotive industry has been using it for quite some time. So Ford has been doing virtual reality for more than 20 years. Toyota is using virtual reality, and also there's one other, Audi is doing it. In advertising, there was an outdoor gear company called Merrill, and they created kind of a mountain hiking experience so that you could feel what it was like to hike in their shoes. In education, there's a school in Ireland where they took about 2 weeks and created a mixed reality experience where they developed this particular site, and they created the entire site so that students could walk around in the site virtually. And in tourism, I believe it's the Marriott Hotels created kind of a teleportal where tourists could virtually walk through streets in London or walk on a beach in Hawaii. And in the AR/VR space, this was the only salary information I could find, but it's on a site called PaySA, and it gives you a range of AR/VR engineer salaries. Now, the mid to upper range of the salaries, obviously, it's going to be people with more experience or with higher degrees, but it gives you an idea about the range of salaries possible, the types of companies that are using AR/VR, and some of the different pay scales that they have. The class is taught by 2 instructors who are formerly from Microsoft, Brian Zhu and Zinli Zhu. Would you mind standing, please? Zinli Zhu is one of the instructors. So it's 40 in-class hours. So you attend physically, face-to-face, in class for about 40 hours. There's also an online component of the class. There are 16 hands-on labs. So again, these are the tutorials I was speaking about earlier. And there's a capstone project. And the capstone project is kind of, you develop it either individually or with a team, depending on how the class is set up. And you will create a project of your own that you want to use to say, like, this is the beginning of my portfolio. And this is just a schedule, so you can look at it if you want to download the PDF file of the class schedule. You can see generally how the class will run. It's a 5-week class. There is in-class use of a HoloLens, so the instructors will provide some HoloLenses. Depending on the size of the class, you might share the HoloLenses, but the projects actually will get ported to the HoloLens. So you start from the start of the project, designing it, developing it, deciding what to create, building it, and then porting it to the HoloLens to see how it actually works on the HoloLens. So these are the things that are covered in the course: to set up the Unity software development environment, to create an AR/VR application using C#. You'll use some of the different systems in Unity, and especially the particular ones that are designed for HoloLens. You'll design the application, and you'll port your application to HoloLens. What we don't cover 3D modeling or asset creation, so we're not going to have you build individual assets. You won't be building realistic scenes, so you're not going to spend a lot of time making sure that the door looks exactly right. We don't cover the 2D graphics, Unity script, or shader development. We use Unity, Visual Studio, GitHub, and HoloLens device. And when you're working with Unity, one of the benefits of learning the Unity development environment is that Unity is supported on multiple different platforms, so you can develop applications for other platforms as well. And this is the course schedule. So it starts May 3rd and it ends on June 3rd. It meets on both Wednesdays and Saturdays because we want you to have enough time to work on the project. The course cost is $2,500, which is an investment. But we're looking at this as being a career development course for somebody that really wants to get into the AR/VR environment. We are also collaborating internationally. So Jinli and Brian also teach the AR/VR course, the HoloLens courses in China. We have a professor who is in Tasmania, and he will actually be coming on a Fulbright scholarship in the fall and winter quarters. He is an expert in human-computer interaction, virtual and augmented reality, and so he'll also be working with us in the fall and winter. Okay. One of the things that we're asking for is if you are either a hiring manager or if you are in HR in the AR/VR space, we would like to have your input as a member of the advisory council. The advisory council gives us information about the industry, what people are looking for, what companies are looking for, and what we're looking for in an advisor is industry experience, preferably in a hiring position. It's a very minimal time commitment, and by minimal, I mean there's no formal meetings. We just basically, Mark Velkoff, who's our product manager, may call you up and say, you know, what's going on, what are you looking for, what are you hiring for these days, and that type of thing. So it's really a very minimal time commitment. If you have any questions about this, or if you want to get some information, I have these cards that I can provide after the meeting, and also I have some of Mark's business cards if you wanted to join the advisory council, and then these are this is the set of resources. So this will come also with the PDFs, so you can download them and see the information that I have that I provided. That's it.
Thank you, Blaze. I hope some of the folks at home could hear that. I'm going to ask Jackson to talk directly into the mic when he speaks. So instead of giving you my slide deck and his slide deck, we're going right over to Jackson's slide deck, just to avoid any more fumbles. And Jackson is from the HoloLens dev team. I'm not sure if that's the official title, but the most important thing to know is that Jackson is the developer responsible for creating the initial Spectator View app. I'll let him tell you a little bit more about the history of where it came from and all those things if that's something he wants to share. But I bumped into him, I believe, at Build last year.
Is that the Builder of the Academy?
Could be one or the other. Yep. At any rate, with no further ado, please welcome Jackson.
Thanks, Train. So yeah, this talk is going to be about what Spectator View is, how you can get it in your applications, how you can find it. It's going to be one part how-to or demo, one part post-mortem, and one part story time with Jackson. And let's start with a video. I don't know if I have audio, or if it'll even play.
Do you need audio?
Oh, we'll find out. Okay, we're not going to start with the video. Anyway, it was just the Spectator View YouTube video that we have on our channel. It's been viewed, I think, 50,000 times, so maybe all of you have already seen it. That number means my mom thinks I'm famous. I don't know, you guys can be the judge. So yeah, I'm a software developer at Microsoft. I work on the developer platform or developer experience team. But that's not super interesting. I'm also a competitive marathon runner. That's me at Beat the Blurch last year. I got 4th place, guy next to me won. That's me at the top of the enchantments in the middle of June, in the middle of a snowstorm. That's me scuba diving. That's me skiing. I also like to take astrophotography and landscape photography. So what that boils down to is I really like photography. Most of my hobbies just center around that. And this is what I shoot. I use a Nikon D7200 with a Sigma 18-35 f1.8. Great lens, great camera. And my manager knew that I really liked to take photos, and I don't know if he's here right now. If he's not, then he can be the butt of all of my stories here. So he knew that I liked taking photos. So one day he calls me into his office, and the way he does that is sends you a message over Skype for Business saying, "Come to my office right now." And that's typically how he summons you. Anyone who knows Jay knows that he can be a man of little words, and so that can have the effect of a spouse saying, "We need to talk." So I'm like, "Oh crap! What did I do?" But anyway, I go to his office, and at the time, this was early-ish on in the HoloLens development, at least for our team, and we were working on the earliest version of the Holographic Academy. So we were making all of these small little applications that we ended up posting online that became the Holographic Academy, that all of you ended up using as initial experiences to learn about how to code for the HoloLens. But we needed a way of showing on our website what those experiences were in mixed reality that went beyond just an MRC capture or a low resolution photo. So at the time, this is Microsoft's internal precursor to Spectator View, and this is all on our blog post for Spectator View. And my manager wanted me to learn how to use this thing. And so that sounded great to me. I got shipped away to an adjacent building for a week and learned how to use it. But what he was really saying was, I want you to be this guy. So if you look at all of our press releases and video content online, there's usually some guy with a big Steadicam running around the stage with a gigantic camera with a HoloLens on top. And that's how you're able to see the mixed reality content on the screen behind the presenter, and then ultimately on your YouTube video. And he unwittingly was saying that I was going to be this guy because we were working with a whole bunch of external agencies at the time, and they all wanted to get their content recorded, but we only had one camera and only one developer who knew how to use this rig, and that was me. So that was the next few months of my life was recording video for a bunch of people at the drop of a hat. But flash forward a few months, our Build conference is coming up. This was Build 2016. And we want to do a holographic photo booth. I think some of you might have been there. Get your picture taken with the hologram in the background. And initially we thought, why don't we just use this holographic camera that we have? We'll bring it down, it'll be great. The problem is we only have one of them, and it really wasn't going to fit the volume of photos that we wanted to take at Build. So we set out to build our own platform that ultimately external developers would be able to use. But the problem was Build was in 2 weeks. Didn't give me much lead time for that. Fortunately, at the time, the Holographic Academy was in full swing. This is the application we were producing for Build that year. It was a shared experience, and that meant that you could have multiple HoloLens devices in one experience sharing a common frame of reference, so you could see the same hologram in the same place across multiple devices. And so we thought, great, we're gonna just strip this code down, use it as the basis for what will become Spectator View. At the time, we just referred to it as Photo Booth. And that worked by what we call a shared anchor. So we have multiple HoloLens devices in our experience. We have a PC that's running a sharing service. The first device, in this case, it's gonna be the Spectator View device. Imagine it has a camera attached to it. Is going to, from its anchor store, create an anchor, upload it to our service, and then the other devices are going to download that anchor, And now, whenever you create a hologram in your experience, if you create it relative to that shared anchor, it's going to be in the same spot for everyone. So we use that to display a sun in the solar system on top of a pedestal for our build photo booth. And we did it in a very small amount of time, but we ended up with some pretty good results. This was an interesting photo. This is Alex and Kudo, who are two of the big guys behind the HoloLens, who would not take a photo unless they could do it together. And so fortunately, we had the forethought, knowing that we wanted to use this as a platform to give to all of you in the future. We had the forethought to allow up to 6 players to be in the experience for this particular app. And so we were able to get them to have a photo together. So now all of this code it's public, it's open source. You can find it on github.com on the HoloLens companion kit under Spectator view. I take pull requests. I encourage all of you to download it if you haven't tried it yet. But we'll be going through a demo shortly, so you can see how you're going to set it up in your own projects. But before I do that, some quick HoloLens setup that you're going to want to do when you're dealing with Spectator View. The first one is when you turn on your HoloLens for the first time, you want to go into developer mode. You want to allow the device portal. I go into the security tab and I disable SSL encryption. This isn't strictly necessary, but it does make some of the tooling a little easier later on. And then I take note of the IP address for all of the devices that are going to be in your experience. And then you're going to calibrate your HoloLens or your rig. And so you do this with the calibration app that's shipped with Spectator View. You're going to run the Visual Studio solution, and you're going to wave a checkerboard pattern at the rig, so the DSLR with the HoloLens on top. And what this does is, if you look really closely at this photo, you can see that the HoloLens and the camera are not in the exact same spot. There's a tiny bit of rotation, and the HoloLens is 4 inches above the camera. So what the calibration phase does is tells your application what the transform is between your HoloLens and your camera, how much is it rotated, and how much is it translated, and what's the vertical field of view of the DSLR or external camera that you're using. So I'm going to switch over to a demo real quick.
Need audio?
No, I shouldn't need audio.
Okay, if you do, let me know.
Yeah, originally I wasn't going to do a demo. I was just going to walk through what the steps were, but Dwayne twisted my arm, so we're going to do it. And of course, I did the cardinal sin of demos by using my laptop today and uninstalling the version of Unity that I needed. But we're up and running, so don't worry. All right, so here I have my Unity project. I have it open to the sample project that ships with Spectator View. And what we're going to do is a demo to show that you don't need a big rig set up for using Spectator View. I'm just going to do it with the integrated webcam in my laptop. Obviously not the best results, but it's completely doable. And so if you're just trialing out your experiences for Spectator View to start with, then it's something you can absolutely do. And so let me just load up where my Spectator View code is stored. So yeah, here's my enlistment. You can see up on the top the calibration app. And so that's what I had launched earlier to calibrate the device to my rig. I am currently using a calibration file that is a 24mm lens on a Canon 5D Mark III, which is not quite the same intrinsics to my laptop webcam, so the results will vary from what you expect, but the end result will be similar. Under the compositor, there's a compositor solution. Open that up in Visual Studio. Whoa. Okay. We're not going to show it over there. Here we go. Some things you have to do here are there's a dependencies.props file, and this tells your Visual Studio Solutions where all of your dependencies are stored. So as an open source project, we can't just distribute or redistribute external binaries. That's usually a no-no with legal departments. So instead, we have this file that says, I have downloaded OpenCV, I've downloaded the SDK for my capture card, and I've downloaded the Canon SDK, which is optional. And Visual Studio needs to know where they are so that it can pull them in. Originally, I had used just environment variables for this, and that was very inconvenient, so we use a dependencies.props file. And then in this compositor shared file, a few things you might have to change are what capture device you're using. Since I'm using my laptop, I'm going to use OpenCV. And since I know the frame resolution of my laptop, I'm going to change frame width and frame height down here. Then you're going to build for both x86 and x64 in here. And the reason you want to build for both architectures is A, you want to be able to support Unity in multiple architectures, but B, you absolutely want x86 because this Unity compositor, this spatial perception helper project runs on the HoloLens, and more on that later. But since it's running on the HoloLens, it needs to be built for x86. I've already built it, so I'm not going to rebuild it. But then, once you build it, you can run this copy DLL script, and that's going to copy the DLLs that you built in the compositor solution to your Visual Studio project. If you just run it, it's going to copy to the sample project. If you run it with the argument of the assets file or directory for your project, it'll copy there. And so when we're using the sample project, it already has all of the Spectator view code and HoloToolkit dependencies in it. But you can also find those in the drop under Unity package. Up one. Unity package, and then I have an archive for the 1.5.5.0 release. And this corresponds to the 1.5.5.0 release of the HoloToolkit. Still pending is an update for the latest release that happened last week, but that will happen shortly. And what you're going to do is in Unity, if you're starting from your project or a brand new project, you're going to want to import these two Unity packages and extract this external zip to the parent directory of your Unity project. And the external project and the HoloToolkit project are just dependencies that Spectator View has. But the HoloToolkit one is a minimum set of the full HoloToolkit, so you're not pulling in everything. If you did want to pull in everything, you can absolutely just get the release version of the HoloToolkit from the HoloToolkit GitHub page. And then your project is going to be set up like the sample project is here. Some things that you might want to notice are we have this prefab up here called Spectator View Manager. And on the right in the inspector, we have a few components that are of interest. We have a holographic camera manager, which is the prefab that does all of the logic for the Spectator View camera that's going to be in the experience. And we have anchor and sharing, which allow the shared experience to work. So the anchor, like I talked about earlier, is the constant frame of reference between all of your devices. And then the sharing prefab allows you to communicate between all of your devices. Below that, we need an IP for the Spectator View. So that's the IP of this HoloLens. And we need an IP of the service that's running on your local PC. And then below that, if you do have another HoloLens in your experience, you can use that here. Currently, I'm only using one, so I don't have that populated. And the other one is if you want to support multiple Spectator View rigs, you can disambiguate which PC is which Spectator View rig. So typically you have a capture card on your PC, and you can usually only have one of those. So you'll have, if you want to have multiple Spectator View rigs in the same experience, you're going to want 2 or more PCs that all have capture cards. And so you'll, for one build, you'll set your first PC. For another build, you'll set your second PC. And then you're going to build and deploy. You can do it here under the app management tabs, or you can do it in the build management like you normally would, which I'm having a hard time seeing. But anyway, I've already built it. The other things that you do want to do before you build it are set your capabilities. So you do, it is a Windows Store app that's running on your HoloLens, so you do want to make sure you have internet client enabled and spatial perception enabled if you want to use spatial mapping. And then there is a Spectator View window with a compositor. Load that over here. And a Holo Toolkit, sharing, launch sharing service. My laptop doesn't actually allow me to duplicate the screen, so I have to use the projector here. Oh, I already have the sharing service launched. So yeah, here's our sharing service. And then back in Unity, if I hit play, you should see me here shortly. Hi. And then if I go into my app, which I've already deployed, I'm going to put this down for a second. Just launching the app I previously deployed. And then it's going to be looking for an anchor. Found one. I'm going to put and we do have audio. Wow. Okay.
Wow, that's new.
Yeah. Okay. HDMI transfers audio. Got it. Okay. Hopefully I didn't deafen everyone in the room and everyone on the stream. But now I do have the app running on the device, and you'll notice that when I move around, you can see that little robot moving with my HoloLens. And since we have color from my integrated webcam, you can do something like this, where I can put the HoloLens directly on my keyboard. So I'm going to put the microphone down for a second again. And there you have it. So that's a very low effort Spectator View there with just a laptop, one HoloLens, a service, and some holograms. But wait, there's more. Okay, so I can breeze through these. These were just how you would set up your experience. And I'll mention anything that I might have missed. So here, I missed this. At the root of your HoloLens project, when you import the Spectator View Unity package, you get this calibration data file. This gets spit out of the calibration app when you go to calibrate your rig. And you'll just want to overwrite the default calibration data file with whatever you produce, so that your holograms will look right to your setup and not to my setup. Let's see, copy DLLs, import packages, send the Spectator View Manager prefab into your hierarchy, set your IPs, set your capabilities. This is also important here. Under Edit Project Settings Player, this is where you set your capabilities, but you also want to set Run as Background as true for the Windows Store tab. And for whatever reason, Unity requires the Windows Store tab Run in Background to be checked in order for the editor to be able to run in background. It doesn't make much sense, but that's what it is. And then here's the full experience. So load up the compositor, see the hologram. You can go full screen, you can start recording, you can take a picture, and then you can open the folder where all of your stuff is recorded and see your output, see your picture, see your images, see your video. So here we started with the Holograms 240 course on the Academy, and that gives us a few things. It gives us a sharing service with the Holo Toolkit. It gives us a shared anchor. It also has some custom messages. So when you import the holographic camera rig into your project, you get transforms for free. So you get where the HoloLens devices are in your experience relative to the anchor. But one thing you don't get is application state. So if you want to do an air tap and respond to that air tap on all of your devices, which you're going to need to do because the composite is happening from the Unity editor, you need to somehow send a network message over the service to all of the devices in the experience. And so this is something that the Holograms 240 course teaches you how to do, and the root of it is a custom message that you can create. Alternatively, you can use whatever networking solution you want to use. We just happen to use the Holo Toolkits one. And then behind the scenes, what Spectator View is doing is Unity has the Unity Compositor Interface DLL that you've built in the Compositor solution. And what that's doing is pulling for color frames from your camera. Then Unity is over Wi-Fi asking your devices, where are you? Synchronized to that are timestamps. So if you just get the raw pose from the HoloLens, it's probably not going to be exactly where you want it to be. So we have this spatial perception helper, which I mentioned earlier, is run on your HoloLens. And what that's doing is asking, where were you at this amount of time in the past? And that's relative to what's the time delta between the color frame from my camera and the holographic frame from Unity. And then you're ready to record. But some things to note are when you are doing holographic recording, the hologram is always going to be in the foreground because it's composited on top of the color feed. So if you have an actor in your scene and they just walk in between the camera and the hologram, they're going to be confused, you're going to be confused, your audience is especially going to be confused, and they might make a face like that. This guy's another member of our team. He did all of the back-end stuff for the photo booth that we did at Build. So if you got, if you went and you got your photo emailed to you, hosted on Azure, that was his doing. And then you also want to make sure that you have a stable tripod. And right now, we're not, our holograms aren't perfectly stable as we move around, especially if you move around quickly. And that's something that we do know, but we do recommend that, at least for now, have a stable tripod. And then some instances of Spectator View in the wild. It's always cool to see your work actually being used. This is Object Theory doing a shoot. Valorum doing like a R2D2 kind of communication app. Data Mesh doing a car thing. I think they might be here too. Their YouTube channel is pretty cool. They post a lot of Spectator View stuff. And so how did we do from the original build photo booth for all of these tenets that we wanted to hit for Spectator View? Not very good. So when we made Spectator View for build, or the photo booth for build, we could produce photos, and that was about it. But according to our PM, we couldn't even do that. So the photos we were producing were very low resolution, and they just didn't hit the quality bar that he wanted. So one of the first things we did was integrate the Canon SDK into a Spectator View, and this allowed us to take full 5760 by 3420, something like that, resolution pictures. This is a photo shoot we did for The Floor is Lava by the Holograms. And it was a lot of fun to do. It was the first showing of our usage of the Canon SDK. And we got yelled at a lot for stepping on the furniture, and it's forever immortalized that we did that. So, sorry. One of the first things we had to do also was fix our performance. So for build, almost everything was done on the CPU. And when you're dealing with high volumes of frame data, that's a big no-no. So this is a pretty simple chart here. Shows YUV color space and RGB color space. If you've done any work with studio broadcasting or video, you might be familiar with this. The YUV color space is what a lot of capture cards use and a lot of studio cameras use. And it allows you to encode video data in a much smaller form factor than an RGB or an RGBA buffer. And so rather than having 4 bytes per pixel, you have 2 bytes per pixel. You use these formulas to convert between the two, because we have to convert between the two because the frame buffer we get from Unity is in RGB, but the frame buffer we get from our camera is YUV. So you've got to know how to convert between the two. In this case, the Blackmagic capture card gives us color frames from our camera in a UY-VY format, which is the format on the left. And we want to encode video as NV12 so we can hardware encode it, and that's the format on the right. And when you're first dealing with color spaces that aren't RGB, you can fail pretty spectacularly, like this. So what the YUV color space says is my Y values are basically my grayscale values, and my U and V values are my luma and chroma. And they're subsampled differently depending on the YUV color space that you're currently in. So in UY-VY, my color space is subsampled 2 on the vertical or 2 on the horizontal. So for every UV, I can generate 2 RGB pixels. But if you end up just putting the wrong U's with the wrong V's or the wrong UVs with the wrong Y's, you can get pretty amazing pictures like this. I should probably start an art gallery or something. But in the back, you can see that the Y values are probably right. Like on the top, you can see the bottom of a swivel chair, and you can see a moving box in the middle. But the U and V values are just totally wrong. And then when I sorted out those shaders, video encoding was all wrong. So this was a mock-up of what our video encoding looked like at first when we migrated from CPU encoding to GPU encoding. My texture was right, but then when I tried to record, it just looked blurry and a little alias. And so I had to figure out what was going on. I fell back to software encoding, and everything looked right, and I looked at the buffers and they were all the same. And the problem was that Unity, when it was interpreting the texture that I was giving it, was applying a default bilinear filter. And if you look back at the NV12 color space, You can't really tell on this image, but the NB12 color space is subsampled by 2 in the vertical direction as well as 2 in the horizontal direction. So when you have a bilinear filter on that, you end up averaging out each row, but each row has data from 2 rows away and not 1 row away. So when you go to average it out or anti-alias it, your colors just get blurred, and that's exactly what was happening. So when you're dealing with non-RGB textures in Unity, and you have to just effectively treat it as a buffer and not as a texture, make sure you tell Unity to just disable everything that it could be doing. So set the NISO to 0, set the filter mode to none, set the anti-aliasing to none. Otherwise, you're going to have some pretty weird issues. This, if you look at it briefly, you might think that it was also a bilinear filter issue, but no, it's just really hard to find high-resolution images of games from the early 90s. In this case, our original Spectator view had a named pipe that was communicating from Unity to an external compositor. And I did really like that design because it would have allowed for easier integration with other engines than just Unity. But it ended up being a huge CPU burden, so we dropped it shortly after and switched to the model that we have now. Throughout the project, I was the mechanical engineer as well as the software engineer. I have 0 mechanical engineering background. So the metal bracket that wraps the HoloLens to the camera, that was produced by a real software or a real mechanical engineer. But funnily enough, that was where most of our early questions came from, and I didn't even know how to open the file. So I very quickly exhausted my 1 free trial of Rhino, and then after that, I couldn't even open the file to help people. But I think most of our issues with that bracket are solved. And so this was my handiwork, just made in 3D Builder in a couple of days. As just an adapter from the piece that we had professionally designed to the hot shoe on our cameras. Then one of our early criticisms was cost of the machine bracket. There we go. And so we definitely didn't want cost to be a barrier for people doing Spectator View. So you saw earlier that you can use Spectator View with just your laptop. But you can also use this design, which is on our GitHub page as well, for a bracket that is completely off-the-shelf parts. This was $40 worth of stuff on Amazon to make it. And we wanted to make sure that our stuff was portable. And so this is my manager's truck. If you look at it quickly, you might think it's a tank. He thinks it's small enough to park in a compact spot, but not everyone would agree. But yeah, Spectator View was portable if you had this truck. So he could fit my entire desk just in the back, and that was important because later on in the development of Spectator View, we had a lot of obligations outside of Redmond, so we had to go to Bellevue a few times. And in order to do that, we had to pack everything up, put it in the truck, drive a few miles down the road, unpack everything, get it up and running. And so that was one of our catalysts for supporting external capture cards. And so now the Spectator View rig can be a little more portable. So you can use a laptop, you can use an external capture card, and you can get by with just a backpack worth of stuff. Unity is always fun to work with. Throughout the development, you would have a few breaking changes whenever Unity revved that you would have to get by. Some interesting ones were when I was switching over to doing more work on the GPU over the CPU. I figured, let's just bypass having a texture as our storage and just use a compute buffer. And that worked great until I had to use a project that was made for Unity 5.4, which didn't support making compute buffers in the way that I needed to. And so I would have had a huge marshalling cost to get my data from Unity into my DLL. And so I had to scrap that and go to pure pixel shader design. And then Unity 5.6, when it came out recently, they just completely broke Spectator View at the start, so I had to send out a hotfix real quick to get that to work. And then my office, the lights turn off every day at 9 o'clock for 3 minutes. And that is enough to completely lose tracking. So every day at 9 o'clock when I was working on Spectator View, I would lose tracking, and I would have to get up and run down the hall, turn the lights on, and continue my work. So try to work in an environment that does not do that to you. So what are the other options for recording in mixed reality? You've got MRC, obviously. You should all know how to use that by now. You've also got some companies doing work in virtual reality to produce mixed reality content. So this is Job Simulator, and they are doing a virtual reality mixed reality take using a green screen to automatically chroma key out the person, and it looks pretty cool. So now I hope I've left all of you with enough information to also be this guy here. And so you can record your own mixed reality content. I'll leave you with a GIF of the shoot that we did with The Verge. And, yeah, having a shared experience is always a lot of fun. Okay, that was my talk. I'm not super active on social media, but if you want to follow me, you can find me here on any of these names. Thanks. Yeah, and I can take any questions if you guys have any.
I'm just going to ask that whoever asks questions, if you can kind of give me a second to get you the mic so the people at home can hear on the live stream. And there are a couple questions that have come in on the live stream as well that we'll try and get to.
Thank you very much, Spencer. In one of your images you showed the floor is lava. The couch was occluding some of the holograms. Can you, how does that work, since the holograms always show up in front when you do the composition?
Good eye. So we did have an artist do a final pass. The question, if any of you didn't hear it, was if holograms always occlude the objects, how do we get around that in this photo? And so we did, when we take a photo, we actually save all of the channels of the photo. We save the color, we save the holo, and we save the alpha. And so when we got this photo directly from the Spectator View, yes, the lava was covering everything. And so we just did a quick pass to rotoscope out the couch, deleted it, and then remerged it in post.
So just as a follow-up to that, would it be possible, and have you experimented with using spatial mapping data and transmit that across the network and using that to do occlusion?
Yeah, so question is, can you use spatial mapping to do occlusion for you? And yes, you can. In Spectator View, you do have an option to serialize the spatial mapping mesh. Where is it? Here, spatial mapping. And so in this case, I do have spatial mapping in my project. So if I find it in here, the spatial mapping mesh from this device just got serialized as a mesh over the network to Unity. And you can absolutely use that as an occlusion mask. If you're trying to do really high quality images, it's not going to be a perfect representation of where the couch is. So you might still want to do some work in post. But that can get you part of the way there. And if you need to do anything else, like anchor a hologram to the spatial mapping mesh in your Unity editor or visualize the spatial mapping mesh, that button allows you to do that as well.
Not seeing any hands up, I'm going to ask one of the questions from online, if we can call it up. Chris, where? Oh, sorry. Sorry, I had to tip the laptop so you guys are looking at Jackson's feed. Question for Jackson. You mentioned that the HTK, the HoloLens Toolkit asset package, was a subset of the whole HoloLens Toolkit. Which parts were left out?
Most of it was left out, actually. I only took what I needed for space reasons, so I didn't want to completely redistribute the whole Holo toolkit when I didn't have to. So the only things I have are spatial mapping, sharing, and building. The automatic build thing that you see in the Spectator View Manager, this thing. And everything else was removed.
Other questions?
So in some of the early footage we've seen of the HoloLens, back in 2015, their spectator view was extremely powerful. The holograms were stuck to the wall very nicely. Is this based on that, or is that a completely separate system that we don't have access to?
Yeah, so this is it's a completely different code base. The end result should be similar, but no, that what you're thinking of is what I showed earlier in an image. And that unfortunately is not able to be open sourced just with the way they made it. So ultimately, we want Spectator View to be feature parity and stability parity with that version. And so keep your eyes on Spectator View.
Anybody else? Wow, you guys are a non-questioning bunch. Or Jackson's presentation was just so thorough. Okay, cool. So thanks again, Jackson. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm now going to attempt to flip over the slides for our draw, but they're not necessary, so if they don't work real fast, then I'm going to basically read off my laptop and we'll go through the drawing portion. And the slide gods are with me. Okay, so first thing I'd like to remind everybody each month is there is a member discount page on the site that only people that are signed up to the group can get to. You're probably all signed up to the group, or those guests that showed up tonight, I encourage you to just sign up. There's no cost. But many of our sponsors provide member-only discounts. Book publishers provide significant discounts off of pretty much all of their books. And Unity provides discounts to their events. So Vision AR Summit is coming up at the beginning of May, just before Build. And the super early bird pricing that Unity had online for everybody has expired. It's no longer available to the general public. But you, as a member, can go online and check out a code that will still get you super early bird pricing if you're itching to hop down to LA and join us for Vision Summit 2017. So that's the discount page. Check it out. In general, the sponsors help make all this happen, so I like to point out who they are. Unity, Microsoft HoloLens, Orange Studios, this great facility. There are coupons at the door that will allow you to check out this cooperative workspace that allows you to come in and spend some time and work, grab an office space, do various different things during the day, run your business from here, whatever it happens to be, you can check it out. Leap Motion, Wiley, Pearson, O'Reilly, Manning, Apress, and even the Fourth Transformation have provided us door prizes on an ongoing basis, so that's a big part of what makes these meetings also valuable and interesting to the folks that are here. So with no further ado, let's roll into door prizes. And Jackson, where'd you go? There you are. I'm going to ask Jackson to draw the first number. And to give you a sense, the first thing we're going to draw are two ebooks. The suggested ebooks are Unity in Action from Manning. But Manning is really cool. They say that when you When you win one of these books, if this is not the book that you want at their site, you can just tell the guy that sends you the email that you want a different book, and you'll get that one instead.
Okay, got it.
Magic number, last 4 digits.
6967.
6967. Oh, come on. Pull the tickets out of your pockets. Take a look. Look at these guys. Check your pocket, Jackson. Okay, 6967 going once, going twice. On we go. Oh, people are running back to their offices to get their tickets. Sorry.
6983.
6983, yay, okay, our first winner. Now, everybody who does win tonight, please come up, give us your name, email, and your Twitter handle if you've got one. That's kind of helpful because it allows us to tweet and congratulate you later and give some feedback to the sponsors to allow them to retweet you and all that great stuff. So that's important. Also, Chris, have you killed the live feed yet?
Not yet, can I?
Yeah, you should probably go ahead and kill it because they can't win at home. Sorry.
Maybe one of them was 697.